are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is August 10th, 2025, and this is episode 323 of Lighthearted. Today we're going to listen to a conversation about an exciting new effort to protect the endangered right whale, and it's an effort that happens to involve lighthouses. My co-host today is the executive director of the American Lighthouse Foundation and my lighthouse bro for the past 25 years, Bob Trapani Jr. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Jeremy. It's great to be here. I am really excited about this podcast. So why don't you say we just get into it?
I think that's a good idea. It's great to have you back as co-host. And of course, you also took part in the interview that we'll get to in just a moment. But let me just ask you, how's the summer going in the American Lighthouse Foundation world?
Oh, my goodness. Straight out, I guess, is the best way to say it. I mean, it's you know the drill. Everybody listening to this podcast knows if you're into lighthouses, there's always maintenance to do. There's always education and outreach. So that stuff is happening throughout the organization. And of course, our storm and mitigation work continues behind the scenes. And, for me personally, I've had a blast this year working with a University of New England fellow named Regina Dyer, serving as her mentor. And we're working together on a climate vulnerability assessment, which is wrapping up here in another week or so. But boy, what a great experience that has been. Just working with Regina and trying to come up with some ideas to make these lighthouses more resilient.
Well, that's all good stuff. And that's a really, obviously, an important subject moving forward. So on behalf of lighthouse people everywhere, thank you for the work you're doing related to climate resilience and all that.
Well, it's a team. So, let's give a shout out to everybody working on it. Love it.
And speaking of such things, regular listeners have heard me talk about Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse a lot over the last few years, often with our frequent co-hosts, Michelle Jewel Shaw and Cindy Johnson. And I just want to make it clear that the Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses that we talk a lot is a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation, which you are the executive director of. Or ALF, which is an entirely different organization from the U.S. Lighthouse Society, or USLHS. And of course, I'm the historian for the society, and this is the podcast of the society. I have a long history with both organizations, which sometimes confuses people. But of course, it's not a competition. We're all on the same team.
Oh, we are on the same team, and it's we love what the Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses has done with this site for 2 decades plus now, and we're up against another challenge, but we are up for that challenge. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. What's the latest that's happening with the storm damage and everything in Portsmouth Harbor Line?
Well, the latest really is about a capital campaign that the Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses is going to be kicking off here on August 7th, National Lighthouse Day. But one really cool aspect about it is having community support in the form of the Lighthouse Credit Union in Dover, New Hampshire. They're not just supporting, they're enthusiastic, and they're actually trying to take a leadership role in aspects of this campaign, which I just find so inspiring because, let's face it, the community loves their lighthouses, but when we run into a situation like this where you have a footbridge that's been destroyed by storms and has really prevented public access, we need the support of everyone. So hats off to Lighthouse Credit Union, and I'm sure everybody's going to be hearing more about that as we move forward.
Definitely. And also, I just want to mention that New England Lighthouse Lovers, or NEL, also made a significant donation towards our new walkway at Portsmouth Harbor Line.
Yes. Way to go, NEL.
So let's move on to today's interview. So please help me out, Bob.
Sure, Jeremy. AIS, which stands for Automatic Identification System, has been used for years to monitor the movements of ships and aircraft in real time, helping to ensure safe and efficient operations. The company MotionInfo, which is based on Cape Cod, provides second-by-second data accuracy using an extensive network of stations.
The North Atlantic right whale, with fewer than 350 individuals remaining, is critically endangered, and 139 right whales have been injured or killed by vessel strikes since 2017, MotionInfo has been implementing high-tech solutions aimed at preventing vessel-whale collisions, and a number of MotionInfo's so-called StationKeeper units have been installed in lighthouses. And Bob, I know you've actually been personally involved with some of those installations.
I have, Jeremy, and I absolutely have had the time of my life doing it. I personally think StationKeeper is fantastic, the whole concept. I know we all can understand the idea that lighthouses were built to protect mariners, and to be able to add another layer of guardianship or protection that a lighthouse can help with in the form of the North Atlantic right whale, well, that's just fantastic. So, and I also take pride in these installs when I've been able to help. Now I've done 3 so far myself, and I want to make sure they look good, because when you come up into a lighthouse, you want these units to blend seamlessly into the historic fabric of the station. But yeah, this is a great initiative, and we're going to continue to dive into this from here.
Yep. It's a great partnership between MotionInfo and lighthouses. So we are about to hear a conversation with Moses Calouro and Portia Calouro of MotionInfo. Portia and Moses happen to be married to each other, in case people were wondering. Joining in the discussion are U.S. Lighthouse Society Executive Director Jeff Gales, and you, Bob, American Lighthouse Foundation Executive Director Bob Trapani Jr. So let's listen to our conversation now. I'm speaking this afternoon with the 2 guests. We have Portia Calouro and Moses Calouro, and also my good friend Bob Trapani of the American Lighthouse Foundation is joining us as well. And during this conversation, we may be joined by Jeff Gales, Executive Director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society as well. Let's get started here. So first of all, Portia and Moses and Bob, thank you so much for doing this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Jeremy.
You are very welcome. So, Moses, I was Googling you, and I saw that you graduated from the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, right? And that since then you've worked on data systems, or data, depending on where you're from, systems for many companies. And I saw that this is really interesting. One of the things you were involved in was the development of a private aids to navigation management system for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that system is, thank you. That system is set up in such a way that private citizens and harbor masters and whatnot can submit private aid to navigation applications through the website. So and make the process go faster. At the very beginning, when we started the project, the Coast Guard was having real problems with folks putting buoys in that shouldn't be, private aids to navigation that shouldn't be in the system without being registered with the federal government. So we worked with the local harbor master, the Coast Guard District 1 headquarters folks in Boston, and devised the system to make it easier for folks to put the application in and then get it processed, because it used to take months and now it takes days.
That sounds really useful, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners know that a lot of lighthouses that are in the hands of nonprofits or other organizations, some of them have been relighted as private aids to navigation. So it's nice that the process has been streamlined. So you, Moses, you founded a company called Maritime Information Systems in 1995. Do I have that correct?
Yes. Okay. We were the first industry portal. We were like Yahoo for the maritime industry.
Oh, okay. Yahoo rather than Google?
Yeah, that's what.
So we'll go with Yahoo.
We'll go with Yahoo. Yeah, we didn't make it as far as Google. So we were well known at the time because there was only like 50 maritime sites. So we were on the homepage of the Port of Hong Kong and Venice, Italy, and Bordeaux, France. And we got superseded pretty quickly thereafter. But we were earlier on. And then we kind of gravitated into other stuff.
What kind of sounds like in general, you've been able to combine your technical abilities with your passion for navigation and maritime systems. Would you say that's correct?
Yes. So my first involvement, by the way, with lighthouses was in math class, where we were using triangulation. We were trying to come up with examples of triangulating your position, and lighthouses were a perfect fit. You could you could measure the angle and figure out where you were and come up with fixes on single lighthouses or multiple, depending on how you were doing it. So, but certainly, using the maritime background, we developed vetting systems for Marathon Petroleum, Arco Marine, and others to manage the safety records of vessels. And I've certainly used the navigation background to kind of program, and especially with this project and lighthouses and line of sight, et cetera. It's invaluable.
Yeah, that's all great. So I want to mention we've been joined by Jeff Gales, Executive Director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, there.
So, Jeff, our conversation is underway here, but please feel free to jump in at any time with any comments or questions. So
You can count on it.
Moses, in more recent years, you've started a company called MotionInfo. I'm trying to get the vocabulary right here. Now, is MotionInfo officially part of Maritime Information Systems, or is it a separate company?
It is. So we started that a couple of years ago. We're actually in aviation as well, and so we were involved. We became involved in this project right about the time where we were kind of moving towards aviation more so, and so we have equipment at 500 airports around the country. There's a tie-in with lighthouses that I can mention later on, but so we were kind of moving in a different direction, and then we were called up to Portland, Maine, and with a small work group in relation to the North Atlantic right whale, and it kind of put us back in this direction. So we refocused, but MotionInfo is part of Maritime Information Systems, yes.
Okay. I want to get to, of course, this project related to the right whales in just a moment. But Portia, let me ask you, we've been emailing back and forth, and you were telling me your background is largely in graphic design.
Yes.
Yeah. And you were also involved with that private aids and navigation management system.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
When our children were little, I had done the design for the private aids auxiliary. Mm-hmm. So I think that's 15 years ago now.
Time does go by. So what is your role these days with MotionInfo?
Right now, the main thing that I do, when I came on, I was in touch with all the historic district preservation officers to get approval to install at lighthouses within each state. So we were working with 13 states, and we have approval in 10. I just kind of, once we got those first 10 approvals, I put the other 3 aside and started moving on to siting at lighthouses. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing mostly now, is reaching out to lighthouse stewards, to see if they're interested in hosting the equipment. Bob and Gary Childs have been very good for the East Coast, making sure that we're getting good coverage up in Maine, down in Massachusetts. And we've been in touch with Jeff Gales about the West Coast. So that's basically, siting is what I do. A lot of talking to towns and private owners.
Let's kind of set the stage here. As I understand it, AIS technology has been around for many years, but what you're calling the StationKeeper program is something new. It's kind of a new use of the technology. Correct me if I don't have that quite right, but can one of you or both of you explain what AIS is and what does it stand for, first of all?
AIS stands for Automatic Identification System. And it's a transponder technology that's been required on large commercial vessels since 2006. And the U.S. Coast Guard has mandated it on commercial vessels as small as 65 feet and over. So it sends a message every 2 to 10 seconds to other vessels so that they can all see where they are and avoid collisions. Mm-hmm. And the component that we're using is broadcasting messages, actually targeting message to specific vessels using AIS. So since 2006, vessels could receive these messages, but nobody was sending them from shore.
And what is StationKeeper, and how is it a new use of this technology?
Yeah, our system is based on geofences that are put in place currently in relation to the seasonal management areas for the North Atlantic right whale. So the use of this hasn't been done in the past, and so our system is like fully automated, where when we detect a vessel that's going faster than 10 knots in particular areas, our system is networked in such a way that we can send a message over the cloud to the radio that's in the lighthouse, out to the vessel, with a message that actually shows up on their navigational display. So as you can imagine, somebody's driving a boat and they have a chart. They don't have paper charts anymore. They have electronic nautical charts. And so AIS kind of typically bubbles into your chart where you can see the vessel moving on the screen. Mm-hmm. And so this is another component where we actually place a text message that pops up as well. So it gets an audible alarm and a text message that they read and with a warning.
And so prior to this, it would be a lot of that information might be squawked out over channel 16, and you'd have to transfer to another channel to get a latitude, longitude, to know whether or not that message was for you in general. It would be broadcast. So you might not be speeding. You might not even be in the area that's being the habitat. But this one lands only on your navigational equipment, kind of like if you're driving your car and where you see the speed you're going, you also see a little yellow box come up that says 10 knots, federal law, so-and-so. So it's very easy to see, understand the import, and make a decision, a conservation decision right then and there. And that's what we're hoping, mariners will do. And 5 out of 6 ships in a test program in Cape Cod Bay slowed down. So it was pretty good.
So tell me how the protection of the right whales enters into this.
The vessel strikes are one of the 2 main causes of death. Right whales today don't live out their full lives. They die either from entanglement or vessel strikes typically. And so for many years, NOAA and others and conservation have been trying to reduce vessel strikes. And the ways that they've done it in the past are these mandatory rules, slow speed zones, and voluntary rules in certain or voluntary zones in certain areas as well. And the only way that they could reach the mariners either on the physical chart or by local notice to mariners, publications telling mariners to slow down in those areas. We became involved in the right whales, let's say in 2007, at the very early days of AIS, providing data to the New England Aquarium for a study in the Gulf of Maine. So at that time, the Coast Guard didn't even have coverage up there in that area. And so we had equipment up and running and we were collecting the data. We provided them historical data so that they could understand where the whales are versus vessels. So at that time, there were 500, let's say, right whales in existence. And in 2017, that number dropped to 375 or so. And that was due to the habitat. The right whales were moving out of the Gulf of Maine to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and they were being hit primarily by vessels in restricted, waterways. At that time, in 2017, we reached back out, and there wasn't really this kind of like impetus or group that was ready to address the issue. Let's say, folks were just trying to study it and figure out what was going on, and it kind of led to this meeting, this work group up in Maine where some of the leading scientists, some of the leading conservation folks got together to basically spitball some ideas as to how to handle both the entanglement in lobster gear and also the vessel strike issue.
At this point, maybe it's a good time to let Bob and Jeff chime in if you'd like to about how you first heard about this and how you've been involved.
Well, I was alerted to a similar program, I think, Moses, from somebody here on the West Coast, where they were putting similar equipment on ferries. They were trying to get the Washington State ferry system to monitor orca whales and avoid collisions with those with orcas. And so I was semi-familiar with it when Moses contacted me about what they were doing. And I've been all for this from the very beginning. I think it's an amazing program. I'm surprised, actually, Portia, that all 6 of the 6 didn't slow down for your whales. It's like, what the heck? Like, maybe their equipment wasn't working or something. But
well, occasionally we'll get a message that says, "Oops, sorry, we're doing a maneuver." Okay. And once the maneuver's done, we will slow to.
Right. So I think it's it's like, it's like you would driving a car, you'd slow down and stop for a deer. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to hit a whale. And if there's a way to prevent that from happening, I think I want to do everything I can to support that. And I think the Lighthouse Society as an organization would want to support that as well. I mean, honestly, the only concern about the program in the Lighthouse community that I have noticed is the equipment itself and how that looks aesthetically, how it will be installed to conform to historic preservation guidelines. Lighthouses typically are not, they're historic landmarks at this point. So, like in our case in Puget Sound, a lot of our lighthouses have these huge Coast Guard towers that conceivably could to host this equipment. They don't even need to necessarily be in the lighthouse, but a lot of lighthouses, I'm sure, on the East Coast don't have that. So that's been the only concern from the lighthouse community about this program. The program everybody loves. It's just how the equipment is going to be integrated with the existing structures, which was always the concern.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the piece that I work on. Moses designed it so that the box, even down to the box, which is 16 inches by 16 inches by 8 inches, comes in kind of a Pelican briefcase looking style item, is Coast Guard gray. I like the detail that he put into it before I even came on board with this. And I'm the designer. So he came up with, a whip-ended antenna so that when you put it next to, and I'm going to say this wrong, Bob, so help me out.
The astragal.
Astragals.
Yeah.
You line that up to the astragals, and the base is white and the top is a whip ended. And so you really have to, when people send me, Bob will send me a beautiful install, and you really have to zoom in to see where the antenna is inside the lantern room. And we try to keep it from being affixed to any historic fabric by its self-mounting. The antenna sits on a board, and then the box sits on the board to keep it in place. So it can be lifted up at any time, moved, removed, those type of things.
So, Bob, you've actually been involved in some installations, is that right?
I have, Jeremy, and they've been a blast. I mean, we first got involved from the American Lighthouse Foundation aspect of this in earlier this year in 2025. And Portia, was it April that we held a big Zoom meeting?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we brought in the College of the Atlantic and Bar Harbor Whale Watch and some other folks. University of New England had a representative on, and we just started talking about how we might be able to make this work, not just with lighthouses, but so one thing led to another, and installs started to happen. I know for ALF, we did our first install was mid-May at Owl's Head Light, and it was followed by Cape Elizabeth. University of New England gave our Friends of Wood Island Lighthouse chapter a hand installing it at Wood Island. And then the most recent one that I was able to install was at Little River Light in Cutler. And Gary Childs, who's our Cape Cod chapter chairperson, has installed a unit at Race Point Lighthouse. And so, yeah, it's been going well. And, Jeff, I'm with you. I've heard the concerns, too, of people about the equipment. I can honestly say, though, when you tuck that antenna up against the astragal, from the exterior of the structure, you cannot see it. And the boxes themselves, I think they're so handsome looking, really, that it actually adds an accent into the lantern room. If they were just a box that was just, I don't know, just nondescript, it might stand out more. But these boxes are actually really, they have an elegance about them, if I can say that about a Pelican case, but they do. And the graphics on the front of them, I know right now from the open houses that we have and the public seeing it, they gravitate right to it, because when they see the graphics on the front of the box with the whales and all the other maritime aspects that are associated with the with that artwork, it starts an instant conversation. So as I like to tell people, lighthouses are still making history, and we keep evolving. So yeah, no, it's been great, and we're continuing. We've also Portia and Moses and I have also been on a Zoom call with U.S. Fish and Wildlife representatives about lighthouses in Maine as well. So we're going to see this network expand, and I personally couldn't be more happier about it.
And if I could add to that, it's, when you're dealing with lighthouse history, and Bob will attest to this, that people always tell you, oh, well, lighthouses, you don't need them anymore. They're, GPS is taken over. You don't need to navigate by them. And so, we're always faced with this issue of, preserving these landmarks that don't have a use. But with your program, I mean, our lighthouses have a new use, really, if you think about it that way. And maybe in the future, there'll be more reasons to use lighthouses to get more support, to keep them preserved, because they are useful in some way. Now we're using them to save whales, which is amazing.
You guys know The irony of all this is that lighthouses used to use whale oil. And here we are today having lighthouses protect the whale. And how cool is that? So it's
Right.
come full circle, and it's just another component of the lighthouse story to share and how things are getting better and better,
Yeah.
even if the lighthouses themselves are not as relied upon as they used to be.
Well, the
No.
North Atlantic right whale, I had realized until this year that why it was called the right whale was because it's a slow swimmer near the surface but close to shore. So it was the right whale to catch. It yielded an abundance of oil for lamp posts, for all kinds of things. The other thing it had is baleen. And that was known as the plastic of its day. It was in men's collar stays. It was in women's corsets. It was kitchen utensils, buggy whips. So the right whale was really, they loved it. And once it was killed, it floated to the surface. So, the lighthouses brought everybody safely home. And now we're hoping it'll do the same for the North Atlantic right whale.
That's a really, really good point. So I think they were really common at one time.
21,000, they thought, in the Northeast, and now we're about to 360. Moses, were you saying? Say 370?
I think the name, if I remember right, I think the name right whales might have originated on Nantucket when Nantucket was the whaling capital.
Yes.
There were the right whales to kill, as you said, and there were a lot of them. They didn't have to go very...
Sankaty Head is is a light station keeper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. You might have dealt with Rob Benchley there. It was like the caretaker for the Sconset Trust. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, well, that's really good to hear. So I want to get back to the lighthouses, but Portia and Moses, I have a two-part question for you. Is this program we're talking about funded in all or in part by the federal government? And part two of that question is, does NOAA play a role in this?
So we have monthly meetings with NOAA. They've been involved pretty much from the start. So this has been a learning curve for a lot of folks. I mean, so when we started, we were at that meeting up in Portland, and we were thinking there was a lot of uncertainty. So the Coast Guard was going to build this and wasn't able to way back in 2007. NOAA itself was intending to build a similar network for the right whale then as well, and were precluded. So the Coast Guard was like, we're going to do it, and NOAA was not allowed to continue. So basically, we started with the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary with that test project in Cape Cod Bay, and were able to successfully message vessels. And NOAA Office of Protected Resources manages the right whale speed rules and whatnot, and they have been involved, and we are working with them on a regular basis to, first of all, we needed their support in order to even send the messages to begin with. So we're in phase one right now, which is basically sending messages to the seasonal management areas, but our goal down the road is to send them to vessels when in voluntary zones, or when, there's a whale in the area. It's like we'd like to send out like an iceberg warning. Basically, there's a whale presence in the area, consider slowing down. Mm-hmm. Funding-wise, we just recently, IFAW, International Fund for Animal Welfare, is one of our partners, as well as the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. So IFAW just won a grant, which will help us get some of the stations that Portia mentioned in North Carolina, South Carolina. So, and as of January of this year, that and IFAW are really private sources of funding. We really had very little at this point. So we're at about 35 locations, 12 of which so far have been funded. So we're kind of stretched thin, building this thing out, but hope that will change over time. But yeah, so NOAA's involved directly. We've had interaction with Coast Guard District 1, 5, and 7, which extends from, Maine to Florida. Mm-hmm. And then also direct contact with the FCC, which gets us our our transmit licensing.
You mentioned private companies involvement. I saw something about Garmin being involved.
So AIS is, required as mentioned, like on large ships and down to 65 feet, and that's great. And they typically have Class A AIS, which means that they're going to see it. They're going to see our messages. The problem is the vessels under 65 feet can still kill whales. So a few years back in St. Augustine, a vessel was coming in from a day charter. There had been aerial surveys, which is how they typically detect a whale. knew where the whales were, a mother and a calf, and that 54-foot sport fishing boat ran over both of them, killed the calf, and critically injured the mom. And so you do that another dozen times, and that's the end of the right whale. So we basically are at the point where we need to send those messages directly to those folks on their screens. And so that's where it comes in. So Garmin's piece is up till April 2nd of this year, we couldn't reach Garmin displays. So that meant 50% of the recreational fleet was not reachable from our network. So with an upgrade, it's free. So any mariner that has a Garmin display of a certain type and above, like you go into West Marine today and buy a chart plotter, and with this upgrade that's free, your system will be able to get our message as long as you connect it to your AIS. So you need kind of two pieces. You need the transceiver, and you need the chart plotter to be updated. And so when that happens, we can reach far more vessels. So, like if you look at like Nantucket Harbor or any of these major ports, harbors, a lot of the folks have this on board just for their own safety. So they want, like in fog, they want other vessels to know where they are. Fiberglass boats aren't very visible on radars from big ships. And so it's important to have AIS just for your own safety. And that's what we're using. We're not, this is open source technology, so it's available in a lot of vessels, and we're trying to just use what's existing on board.
So let me ask you, how many of these units have been installed so far?
We have 35 or so on the East Coast. So our main goal at this point is the North Atlantic right whale habitat that runs from basically Cape Canaveral to Maine, so Cutler. Mm-hmm. And so we have 35 up and running, and our goal is to get to 75 or so by the beginning of this season, which the right whale season starts, let's say, November 1st in the Southeast. And so to have that many up and running would be fair. Like, we're not going to have full coverage, but pretty close at that point. Mm-hmm. We'd like to continue into Canada because they go up into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, but we'll have to reach out to the Canadian Coast Guard about that one. But at least in the U.S., we've had good support from the Coast Guard in order to do this.
Permitting for these have only come through since January of 2025. So to have the 35 up and running since January is pretty quick. And so we feel confident that we could get up to the 50, 75 mark by November, which is the beginning of the next migration of the North Atlantic right whale, coming up through the calving grounds of Georgia and even North Florida, up all the way up to Maine.
Is it all large mammals that you're trying to save, or is it just a specific species?
Yeah.
So our technology is kind of like we're the messenger, right? So we're not detecting the location of the whales. They're detected by aerial surveys, passive acoustic sensors that require the whale to actually talk, So and then vessel identification or detection. So what we're doing is we're basically, right now it's just a slow speed zone at a school, right? So we're just, you're required to go this slow from this time to this time. As we move along, it'll be, dynamic zones, and those will come out of a feed. So to answer your question directly, yes, down the road, our intention is humpback whales, any other large mammals, orca, but also like corals or marine protected zones, or if there's an oil spill. So this technology can place buoys on a screen, geographic notices, meaning polygons, as well as the text messages. So we think that down the road, this will help save mariners without doubt. So somebody falls overboard and they don't have, an EPIRB, or they don't have any kind of a tracking. And you know how on Channel 16, the Coast Guard will, pon, this is sector we're told. We have a vessel on fire in such and such latitude, longitude, be on lookout. We could do that as well. And then not only put it on the screen, but actually give them the course and distance to that marine incident, So this would extend well beyond the right whale. It's just, this is a very specific, we need to solve this problem and kind of like cut our teeth on it. And this is kind of how we're working with it. We have a purpose that the Coast Guard can approve of. The other stuff is going to take a little while to figure out. So
I have a follow-up question, and you may not be able to answer this, but maybe through your studies and your research, So you say the right whales, their path basically goes from Cape Canaveral up to Cutler, and maybe even further north into Canada. Is there any way for you to notice if there's any type of a pattern to the way they swim? Are they staying in their own lanes? Are there traffic patterns? And is there any way to somehow, I mean, 'cause, airplanes, the airliners, they have their traffic patterns. Ships, they have their channels that they stick to. I wonder if whales have that too. Is there any way to incorporate that with your technology to avoid them?
So similar to teenagers, they follow the food. And if they feel that there's a large amount of copepods, which is kind of a delicacy up in the Northeast for the North Atlantic right whale. And North Atlantic right whale has stereo nostrils. So it can smell to the side, it can smell to this side, and just head where it senses there's going to be enough food. At some point, I believe it was 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, Moses, there was a shift that they started going from the Gulf of Maine into St. Lawrence. So there were strike after strike at that point, because in Maine, they were well aware to be on the lookout, but now they were in channels, and that's because their food went there.
Mm-hmm.
So it does shift. They're definitely from the calving grounds. Those have been historically similar every year, but once they get up north, it can start to vary.
To kind of bring this back to lighthouses, how many of these units have actually been installed at lighthouses at this point?
So when we're talking about numbers like 35 or whatever, those are stations that have FCC and USCG licensing. We have many more that are waiting for licensing. And so right now, I think Moses is at about 15 lighthouses. And then Bob has already been talking with at least 2 more. Then we have a couple of more in Massachusetts, actually 4 more, if I'm not Bob. So we're well over 15 at this point. It is the largest group of stewards that we're working with.
Of structures where they are.
Coastal.
Yeah. I have a dumb question. I'm here on the New Hampshire seacoast, and I'm very involved with Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse, which is under the American Lighthouse Foundation. Has one been placed there, or is that in the works at this point?
We don't have one at Portsmouth. I think there was electrical. Bob, is that where there was a crack in the cement?
Yes. Yes.
Just a couple of years ago, maybe. So we were just making sure everything was stable. And then one of the things, so we do, the unit draws about the amount of electricity as a household light bulb. So, but it does need electricity. And then the next thing is internet access so that we can monitor it from here. It can send the messages and so on and so forth. So in very remote locations, we've been able to install the equipment necessary to make that work. But that's expensive. And again, we only have 12 funded. So we're kind of, looking for the things that are easier to get up and running in a location if it has all the things available. And then we're going to work back through to make sure we don't have any gaps.
Bob, you mentioned a few of the ALF lighthouses where it's been installed. And Portia, you mentioned Sankaty Head on Nantucket.
Yes.
What other lighthouses have these been installed in, or are they in the works for on the East Coast?
Mo, is Gaze Head up and running? I know they were getting equipment this week.
They haven't been up yet, but they're getting the equipment. Montauk, we can bounce around a bit. St. Augustine was one an important one because that's the calving ground of the right whale. But
Moses, we've got Mount Desert Rock, Great Duck Island, Halfway Rock, and Seguin Island will be up and running at some point soon.
And then we have Cape Elizabeth.
Right. Yep.
And you mentioned Halfway Rock, Great Duck, Seguin, Little River, and Cutler. We're also on the Pilgrim Monument in Provincetown, Cape Cod, Race Point Lighthouse, through help from Gary Childs. We're looking at Nauset Lighthouse currently, and also Monomoy Point. Sandy Neck Lighthouse, I think, went in recently. Sankaty Head. We have equipment heading out to, if not already, at Gaze Head. in Martha's Vineyard, and then Montauk Lighthouse. I'm sure most mentioned that. And we're looking at Fire Island Lighthouse, Romer Shoal Lighthouse. We've just been installed at Navsink in the Highlands of New York. Seagirt in New Jersey will be installed soon. Then we have aquariums and things like that. Cape May has their equipment currently. We have a life-saving station in Delaware. Stop me if this is getting long. We're looking at installing at Diamond Shoal, and also we're already at Frying Pan Shoal and Bald Head Lighthouse, all in North Carolina.
I hear a rumor there might be something at the Twin Lights, Thatcher Island off Cape Ann, Mass.
Oh, right. Yes. Cape Ann up in Rockport.
Yeah.
Hilton Head in South Carolina, St. Augustine, and Sapelo Island, Georgia.
And coming soon, hopefully, is Petite Manans and Matinicus Rock as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are all some of my favorite places in the world you're talking about here. That's
very unique. And the thing about the lighthouses is it's, when you make a good decision as a parent or something, there was somebody back in 1780s who said, all right, about 20 miles apart, we need this height. I have a bluff, or I don't have a bluff, but I need this this line of sight to reach the mariner. And we're basically a similar thing. That's a light wave, and we're using a VHF wave. So, and every 20 miles, really every 10 miles is more important, but we're just trying to pick and choose a little bit every 20 miles to try to get the coverage necessary, because the whales themselves don't jump over a state. They go straight through, and we're trying to follow with that.
Makes me think, I'm sure Bob and Jeff are probably thinking of it too, the days when the Lighthouse service, their aim was you would never be out of sight of a light as you're along the coast.
It's interesting that you're able to use the way the lighthouses were purposely built and designed and engineered to benefit your program. That's actually fascinating.
They really are perfect. And the lantern room gives that unobstructed view towards the waterways. In North Carolina, a lot of the lighthouses that we all can recognize are under construction for the next 2 to 3 years. So the Dare County Water Authority has stepped up and offered. They have 11 sites, and we're looking at 7. They have cell tower. They put cell equipment on their towers, but we don't fight with that at all, because we're, first of all, VHF, and we want to be on the water side, whereas a cell tower wants to be on the land side. So it's really, every time we come in across a new, maybe it would look like a problem, it's always worked out in a very balanced and beautiful way.
It sounds, obviously you've had great cooperation from Bob and the American Lighthouse Foundation, and now for the West Coast, Jeff and U.S. Lighthouse Society. But in general, what about other organizations? Have people been really receptive to this?
I'd say yes. Like Bob had said, nobody wants to hurt a whale. And even the fellow down in Florida who struck the mother and calf, and later the calf passed, and that mother had already lost a calf prior to that. She's actually terrific. She's a 40-year-old, and she's trying all the time to make sure she has a calf that makes it. But that 54-foot boat lost both of its engines and sank in the channel. So and he said, I would never want my crew, or people who'd rented a charter boat to see that happening, and to know that that was something that happened on his watch. And Mo being a Maritime Academy graduate, and our son being a Maritime graduate, he's very aware that the captain's main focus is the safety of everyone on the boat. It does not matter the size. And for that boat to sink in a harbor keeps everybody else from coming and going, but then he's lost his investment too, that gentleman. So I think one of the things that Mo's also very aware of is when ships, particularly very large ships, come into a port, they have to have a certain speed not to draw towards one another. It's a safety issue. So he's very careful not to be pinging somebody when that's your busiest time as a crew, is to be, we're going to get everything going ready to port. So he doesn't want to be pinging them as they're doing that. So he sometimes geofences those areas for the larger ships.
You, Portia, and Jeff and Bob have all kind of alluded to different ways and how it's, interesting that lighthouses are being used in this way, but kind of symbolically. I wonder if you have anything else any other thoughts about the symbolic value of lighthouses being employed this way.
Bob's a poet on this one.
I don't know if it's symbolic, Jeremy, but I think I can offer this up. I think every lighthouse steward keenly understands that their lighthouse, in most every case, is situated in pristine environmental landscapes, coastal landscapes. And we all want to, I think, do our best not only to care for the lighthouse, but to conserve the environment as well, and including the marine environment. So I see this partnership with MotionInfo, StationKeeper, with lighthouse stewards, hopefully across the country, just being able to further, amplify that commitment to preservation in all forms, where these lighthouses sit. And I think, to me, that's attractive, because we all know we get a lot of lighthouse visitors when lighthouses are open, and not everybody knows or cares to know deeply about lighthouse history. But everybody walks away feeling good when they know that the steward that is there and who they're working with is all working to preserve what they see around them. And I think that's a win-win for everybody.
And Bob, I agree with that 100%. And what happens, and you've been around the lighthouses to know, and I have too, what happens when people are visiting a lighthouse property and somebody says, whale, I see a whale, what happens? Everybody mad rush to the coast or to the rocks.
That's right.
They love whales. I mean, makes so much sense that this program is at lighthouses.
Yeah. And Jeff, to piggyback on that, I mean, we always want to get young people involved, and the young people love the whales. I mean, people of all ages do, but man, children just love to learn and see whales. And this is just another reason why young people, when they're involved with lighthouses, that it's more than lighthouses.
East Hampton Maritime, they're part of the Historical Society down there. The Maritime Museum, they have a coastal studies class with little children. And Stacy Myers from down there sent me a picture of students hugging the box. It's got to be the cutest thing I've ever seen, because she teaches them all about it. And then they say, oh my gosh, we do this. Then they draw the whales, and they, draw the lighthouses and all these things. And they make those connections on that they can be kind of enthusiastic about the program. And we have Nate from from MotionInfo, who's going to be going into a school around here, and all the boxes that we get in, we're bringing, the delivery boxes, we're bringing over 25, because we order 25 at a time. We're bringing those over so the kids can create their own boxes. So they'll get to see a real one, but then with glue and scissors and drawing and whatever, they can create their own boxes. And at the school where my children went, they always put these projects along the hallway. And so we'll have a big lighthouse and all the.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's like another aspect of this that I hadn't even thought of, the educational potential. That's great. But I love what you said, Bob and Jeff. Lighthouses don't exist in a vacuum. They're very much part of the planet,
Yeah.
Part of the marine environment. So, it's not just about the lighthouse as an isolated thing. Let me ask you, and this could be for anybody, any thoughts about other ways similar ways lighthouses can be utilized moving forward? Any thoughts about that?
Our project, obviously involves VHF, radio messages to vessels, but we know of, especially with the right whale, other projects, FLIR cameras, for example, and infrared, and those may be a fit. We've talked to folks about our project, and they're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. We have a similar kind of need." Like Jeff, you mentioned that exactly in relation to the Orca. They use a different type of technology for sensing, and that sensing needs to backhaul so that we can send the message out. So it works hand in hand with what we do. So the folks that are at the whale desk have those cameras. If those go up into the lighthouses as well, there's use for that, and then that kind of ties directly into what we're doing. So weather stations is another example.
Well, it's all evolving and improving going forward. Before we wrap things up, Bob, did you have a comment you wanted to add?
I do, Jeremy. Thank you. When you had asked earlier in the podcast here about funding, federal funding, and what have you, it did actually bring to mind the idea that when you're talking congressional, federal funding, or even private sector funding, they often love to fund projects that are partnerships and have a bigger impact on the community. And that's another aspect of working together with a company like MotionInfo, with Lighthouses, and it actually works both ways, is that the partnership increases the value of our missions and the impact and the numbers of people that we are able to make a positive difference with, and in this case also protecting the whale as well. So that's another facet that I think we should all, as Lighthouse stewards, try to just cultivate these really wonderful partnerships that can only increase the value of everybody involved.
I second that. So, final question for bonus points, okay? Portia and Moses. What has been your favorite thing? What is your favorite thing about this project, about working with MotionInfo and the StationKeeper program?
One of the things I like, Moses has been doing this for 30 years, working with the maritime industry and so on and so forth. And we'll work together every morning or every evening after I would come home from work. And he asked me a couple of years ago when this project started, when it was first talked about up in Portland, I would like you to come home and work, work on this project. And I said, I don't want all our eggs in one basket. But then this winter, I said, let's put all our eggs in one basket and I would love to come home. And it's really brought together. I used to work for Historic District Commission in Bristol, Rhode Island. I was a designer before. I worked for Hasbro Toys at one point doing design, and Stanley Bostitch for doing design. And so it kind of brought together so many things I loved in every job that I had. And now I get to do all those things in one job and also be able to work with Moses, which is loads of fun. So I'd say that has been such a great surprise. We don't know when to end our day. We certainly don't know when to end it because we're up and we start and then we look at each other and say, oh gosh, we should probably give the kids dinner or something.
Yeah, that's great. But, when work isn't work, that's always something to shoot for. Mo, anything you want to add?
Sanctity Head Lighthouse is very important in that, only a year ago, there were 77 whales off of the Boston Shipping Channel near the lighthouse. And so, the folks from the Sanctuary Foundation or the Sanctuary, the Stellwagen, called us up and said, "Hey, can you get a unit out there now so we can message vessels?" And it just doesn't work that way. We need to have the stuff up and running in advance. And so it's really satisfying and to be able to kind of say that with the Lighthouse Foundation and the lighthouses themselves, we get this stuff up and running and we can actually extend this protection. So every time one of these goes up, it's super gratifying to know that area of the ocean is covered, and we don't get no's from folks. Really, the vast majority is no. Everybody that we've talked to, is super excited about, wants to do something. Everybody, I think, is really long story short, has an interest in the whales, wants to do something. How can I help? And this gives them something that they can do, which they couldn't before. They're helpless. And this gives them hope and an opportunity. So, very happy about that.
It gives the mariner an opportunity to become a conservationist at the moment, conservationist right at the moment that it's necessary.
Well, that kind of brings to mind another way that they kind of link to lighthouses and their symbolism, this being a symbol of hope and this being a symbol of hope in a different way, but kind of merging those. So hope's I like the use of the word hope there, Moses. So that's good. It's really neat to think that Nantucket, which was the whaling capital of the world for many years, is now involved in saving whales as much as that. That's really great.
Mo had a tribe member mention to him that when the gray whale showed back up, it hadn't been on our coast, it hadn't been seen for over 100 years. And they were saying that to them, it's their ancestors are all around in nature. And to have the gray whale come back is symbolic of, I think we're going to get this right. We trust that this is going to be done correctly, whatever that might be, whatever form that comes in, the gray whale is sensing that we're trying to do the right thing. And I thought that was lovely.
I just have one follow-up question for Moses. You've been doing it for a long time. What is it about the right whale, or just saving whales in general. What inspired you to want to do this? Was there something in your life that happened, or an event that caused you to pursue this?
I know as a child, I visited the New England Aquarium, and it's captivating. Whales are captivating, and so, I think it's in general. Like I've never seen, like up until maybe last summer, never saw a right whale. Couldn't tell the difference between one or a humpback or whatnot. But it's just in general. I think it's like the imagination alone. The fact that these beasts they're so huge, they're so massive. We need to, if we can't protect them, what can we protect? Like what can we do? This is not an entire solution. It's a tool in the toolbox, right? So they're going to get hit. I think NOAA, hit the alarm bell. We went from 500 to 375, and they had no tools, no additional tools. They've been struggling for years and years to stop these whales from getting hit. And what we realized is that 54-foot boat is filled with navigation equipment, like high-end navigation. They had everything. They have AIS, they have radar. And the captain said, just get that on my screen. And so we're just the lighthouses, the folks that host this equipment are going to get it to the mariner so that we can do the best we can. We don't know if they'll be around, but at least we know that we've done our best. That's what I can say. So.
You know what, Moses, you had mentioned, maybe StationKeeper isn't the all-encompassing solution, but you know what? In many ways, neither was lighthouses. There were still shipwrecks after lighthouses were built. But I think the one thing that it says is that your company, MotionInfo, cares to make a difference in the moment and try. A lot of people will talk about needing to do something, and Portia and you are moving forward to do something. And I think that speaks volumes, because that's all any of us can do. We're trying.
Well, thank you so much. This is a really interesting conversation with all of you, and maybe we can follow up and do it again sometime. But this podcast, it's obviously U.S. Lighthouse Society. It's mainly about lighthouses, and this is a little bit off the usual topic. It's obviously related, but I'm so happy to talk about something like this, because it is such a positive thing in the world. And I like to talk about how we all need to be a lighthouse as well as people, in the world. So it all fits together really well. So thank you, Portia Calouro and Moses Calouro and Jeff Gales and Bob Trapani, for all being part of this. It's been a lot of fun, and let's all stay in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
To learn more about what MotionInfo does, listeners can go to MotionInfo.com. And to learn more about the program to protect right whales that was discussed in the interview, check out MotionInfo.com/StationKeeper.
For all the reasons we talked about in the interview, this is a really cool program. We all want to preserve our whale populations, and I think this is a really nice repurposing of lighthouses.
Oh, it sure is, Jeremy. And another aspect about this is just being able to make new friends, not just through the partnership concept, but also people who feel strongly about protecting the North Atlantic right whale are going to be introduced to lighthouses as well. And that's another way of making new friends and just saying, hey, we're all in this together.
Absolutely. I want to mention a book that Moses Calouro recommended. It's called We Are All Whalers, The Plight of Whales and Our Responsibility by Michael J. Moore. Here's a little from the Amazon page for the book. Quote, despite the challenges, Moore's tale is an optimistic one. He shows us how technologies for ropeless fishing and the acoustic tracking of whale migrations make a dramatic difference. And he looks ahead with hope, as our growing understanding of these extraordinary creatures fuels an ever stronger drive for change, unquote. And MotionInfo's StationKeeper program, I'd say, is another piece of this puzzle.
Exactly. I think, too, we all see it who are lighthouse stewards. The more that we can find ways to partner with others in our community, especially the coastal communities that these lighthouses reside in, the stronger our mission is going to be. I don't care if we're going for funding or if we want to look at community impact or just attract new people. When we can expand on why lighthouses are important and how they can help beyond what we traditionally see them as, everybody's going to win in all of that. So I just make sure that light keeps shining brighter and brighter.
I concur with everything you said. Bob, thanks so much for co-hosting and for everything you do for Lighthouses. I hope it's a great summer for ALF and its chapters.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. And I know I've said this before, but it bears saying again, thank you for all the work you do on the podcasts. They are amazing. They do educate, but they also, I think, provide many gateways for people to be able to see what they love about lighthouses. The variety is a really good thing, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that is a lot of what I'm aiming for here. So we're going to be back with a Lighthearted Light episode next week, and then there will be an all-new episode in 2 weeks. For now, to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thanks so much for listening, and
keep a good light.